Jaya Radha Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So this morning we'll be continuing our discussion of different values or character traits in the life of the Vaishnava. Yesterday we looked at choice, individuality. And so this morning we're going to go to the next logical value, priti, or affection. And I say it's the next logical one because, as we were discussing yesterday, without this element of choice being there, then the whole idea of love of God becomes done away with. If there's force required, then where's the real love? A voluntary choice is what gives the flavor of love. So moving from choice to discussion of that loving exchange is what we'll do today. And what I like to do in these kind of seminars is to give some practical demonstration of the lesson that we're having, because I think it reinforces the points that are made. And so I'd like to start off this morning with some reciprocation. As we get into the discussion of Priti, we'll find that there's a lot of reciprocation that's part of it. And so to start that, Madhavati Dasi, in reciprocation with a request from His Holiness Devarita Swami, is going to tell us a little bit about some of the choices that she made, that she had to make in her life to be in the situation where she is right now. And so to reciprocate with that request of Maharaj, we'll start with her telling her story.
Here I am, a storyteller. So, I'll tell you two stories about the choices that I made. One is when I came to Krishna consciousness. So I was looking for the absolute truth, and I found it at the Hare Krishna temple. I was looking and I inquired through phone conversation with some devotees, and all my questions were answered. And so the first day I went to the Hare Krishna temple, I made the choice, I'm going to move in. So the devotees were like, okay, sure. And so I said, I just have to make a call to my family and tell them that I'm going to move to the Hare Krishna temple, and I'm just have to come and get my luggage.
How old were you?
19. And so I called, they said, sure, come home. I came home, they locked the door, I got a good slap on my face, and they said, that's it, you're not going out of the house. So that was just I had just finished my second year of engineering, and so it was summer break, so it was a perfect time for them to lock me in. There was no classes, nothing. So then I tried to preach, and that didn't work, and then I pretended I was not into Krishna consciousness, and that seemed to work. So the doors were open, I was back in school, and I thought I did a good job. They didn't know anything about it, so I was trying to fool them, but they were fooling me. And at that stage, this was, by the way, I was with my brothers living in Ireland, and my parents were back in Delhi at that time. So before I knew, my brothers called my mother for rescue, what to do with their sister. And anyway, so she came, and I told her what I want to do with my life, and basically ended up, she took all my books and hid them, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She said, if you want to follow, get married, finish your school, get married, the typical thing. Finish school.
Can you explain to them, because they're thinking, well, you're Indian, so how could the parents,
Well, first of all, we were talking about the moral compass. So the Indian moral compass is you stay at home, be protected by your parents, and then the parents give you for marriage. So as far as Krishna consciousness is concerned, you can practice at home. So that, and for a girl to move into a temple without the protection of her parents, that was like a no-no. And anyway, so nothing kind of helped till I guess I was just so anxious to move into the temple and dedicate my life to Krishna that I knew if I ran away and moved into the temple in Dublin, it's right next door basically, they're going to come and get me. So I thought, I have to do something far out. Something move.
Hindu family or Vaishnava family, or what was it?
Oh, okay. My family is very, we are Ram Bhaktas. My mother read Bhagavad Gita every day in the morning ever since I ever known her till even now, and she's 80 something. And, no meat eating, no nothing. They actually grew up with no onion and garlic, but when they came to the West, that kind of was added in. Very, very nice family with good moral, upbringing, and I was very, very a protected daughter, and I have 3 brothers, so you can imagine my parents protecting me, and then my 3 brothers protecting me. So there was plenty of protection in the family.
Like a good New Zealand family.
I don't know what they're like, but anyway, so I basically decided that I needed to run away. So I will spare you with the details about how I did it.
No. It's the good stuff.
Really, Mara, you really want to hear?
Yeah.
Well, the brother who slapped me on my face is my twin brother. And when the doors were open and I went back to college, I used to preach to my friends. And I could see that he had some interest. And I'm like, okay, this is the guy I have to work, my brother. And if I work on him, he will help me to run away. So that was my plan, strategic plan. Krishna went along with that, actually. So I used to pray every single day that my brother becomes a devotee. And so I preached to my college friends, make sure that I was saying it loud enough that he could hear. And then at a certain stage, when I saw that he was actually hearing me and getting interested, then I used to preach to me at home, telling the shlokas and, fired up devotee, telling everything, And so actually he did get convinced. And then what happened when I told him that I wanted to run away from home, he said, okay, I'll help you. And basically what happened that he happened to go to the temple, and there was the temple president from Philadelphia temple visiting there. And he told him, she wants to join the temple. Can she come to America and join there? He said, oh, no problem. We'll take care of her. He didn't really know that I was actually going to come at the doorstep there. But anyway, so then basically he said, oh, Manamati, the temple president was there, so we can make arrangements for you to go there. So, my mother and I had a joint account. I got all the money out. I not only got the money for my ticket, but I had extra 2,000 pounds that I took with me. And then I had an Indian passport, but because I was born in America, because my father was a diplomat, due to my birth certificate, I was able to get an American passport. So I got an American passport. This is without my mother's knowing anything. Got an American passport, got a ticket, and then very quietly I would got a suitcase, got some clothes, one at a time, bring it to the temple and pack it all up there. And then I wrote a note. By the way, my mother never told the temple president I was coming, but anyway. So he just told me he found the address. I don't know how he found it, but whatever. He did his homework. And so then I wrote a note to my mom. I'll be late from the library tonight. Don't worry. I took a plane. Headed to New York and had the same experience. I was sitting on the plane, like Shesha was saying yesterday. I was sitting there and, tears and knowing that this life is behind, excited about going and serving Krishna, but not knowing where I'm going, there was a mixed emotions there. So I did whatever. My brother dealt with everything, what happened at home. Police was involved, all kinds of things. But I'll spare that one. Anyway, so then there I was. I took a shuttle from New York, and I ended up at the doorsteps of Philly Temple. And I said, I'm here from Ireland. And the girl said, you're from Ireland? I said, yeah, I've come here to move in the temple. And so she went, there's an Indian girl from Ireland here, Indian girl from Ireland. And then finally I went to the temple president, and he was like, oh, okay, you actually came here? You know? So that was the choice that I made. And sometimes I actually wonder whether it was a choice that I made because that was not me. I was in a very protected atmosphere. So the step I took, I think almost like Krishna blows his flute. He doesn't give you a choice. He's blowing his flute. You're attracted to it, you know. So it's not a matter of choice. It just happens, you know. So that's how I ended up in the Philadelphia temple. So that's the choice I made. And the next story that Marge wanted me to tell about how I got married. Well, this was probably maybe only 4 months I was living at the temple in Philly. And by that time he had become the temple president. So I guess as a temple president you have the right to say who you want to marry. I mean, so is that true? Comments?
I just want to know what happened to that 2,000 pounds.
You must have given some sidelong glances. Come on, yeah? Sidelong glances.
Anyways, by the way, there are enough sancta and devotees in the temple that they know exactly what a newcomer is coming with 2,000 pounds. But the foyer was taken care of by those two, you know, the foyer, yeah. Anyway, so it was barely 4 months when Satsuru Maharaj, aspiring disciple I was, so he called me in his office one day and he started talking about Shesha Prabhu and how he's such a nice devotee. But I was so naive. I didn't know why he was talking about him. I really didn't know. So he kept on talking. I'm just like, okay, I guess he's the temple president. He's telling me how good he is. And then he said, he'd like to change his ashram. That even didn't click me. Okay? I really didn't know why he was telling me that he's going to change his ashram.
How old were you?
I was 20. And I didn't know so much about brahmachari ashram and grihastha ashram. I was just 4 months there living in the temple. And so then he said, would you consider marrying him? And I'm like, what? I was just shocked. Actually, just a couple of years ago, I was visiting him in upstate New York, and he was telling us that he still remembers how I was so shocked when he mentioned that to me. I was truly shocked, and then I said, I have to ask my parents. And so here, I ran away from home. I did some crazy stuff, but when it comes to marriage, its parents have to arrange the marriage, yeah? So I said, I have to ask my parents. So he said, you know what they're going to say? Yeah, they're going to say no. So it's almost like he said, that's not a choice. It was almost as, not that he said, you can't ask them, but he was kind of saying, they're going to say no, so what's the point in asking them? So then I said, but I have to ask somebody. And because of some political reasons or whatever, told me that he didn't want me to ask anybody. So I'm like, but I have to ask somebody, you know. So he told me, okay, you can ask so and so. I said, okay. So I went and asked this devotee that, and right after I spoke to him, I went and asked the devotee, this is what Satsumaj is saying, what should I do? He said, whatever the spiritual master says, you do. I said, okay. So I wrote him a note, a letter right then, and I said, I was told whatever the spiritual master says, you should do it. So I will do this. And that was it. And so Maharaj was happy, and I guess he was happy. I don't know if he's still happy, but so, however, we were talking about the moral compass, and I was realizing yesterday when I was thinking about it that how it actually takes time for going from one moral compass that you were brought up to what we are encouraged to the Shastra, Guru, and Sadhu. So although I said yes to Maharaj, then later on I started thinking, I can't do this unless I get the blessings of my parents. So that kept on coming in my mind. I have to get their blessings. So then I told him that please, I can't do this unless I have to get the blessings. And he said, and in my innocence, I thought, they'll get blessings, they'll give me blessings, you know. I mean, I've been living here for 5 months almost, and it should be a problem. I had written them enough letters preaching about, you know, what I'm doing is probably what you always wanted to do in my life, and, you know, I'm following this, you know, you shouldn't be upset with me, you should be proud of your daughter. Anyway, I had written all that stuff. And so I thought, anyway, for some reason I thought that they would give me blessings. But again, with a moral compass, I could not call them, because that's like, you know, a daughter coming and telling her parents, I want to marry, you know, that's just like not a good character almost in India. It's not, you know, so I just couldn't tell them that, ask permission myself. So I asked him to call my father, you know, call my parents, and then
That was hard.
So, you know, they were in Denmark by that time. So he called them, and my father answered the phone. And my father, he said, I'm the temple president of Philadelphia. Yes. I was wondering whether your daughter, I don't know exactly what you said, but your daughter is going to get married, and he didn't say it was him. He just said that, yeah, your daughter is going to get married, and she'd like to have your blessings. No. Then he said, is he Indian? No, he's American. No, she does not have my blessings. And he hung up the phone.
You said no a few more times.
So I thought, okay, what do I do now? So then I thought, okay, maybe I'll call again, and maybe my mother will answer the phone, and maybe I have to call. So then I called my mother. I called same number, and my mother answered the phone. And so then I said, so then my mother said, he's not Indian, how can we let you get married to him? She didn't know that he was not only he was not American, but not only that he was American, but he was African American. So that's like a no, you know. And so just the fact that he's American was a no. So then I said, he said, no, how can we allow you to do so? And then I said, he said, how old is he? And then I said, you know, he's 10 years older. Oh no, that is not. He's 10 years older, he's not Indian. How can we give you blessings for something like this? So all I could think was, at that stage was, I said yes to my spiritual master. And now I'm going to say no. And I know I couldn't go ahead with it. There was something in my heart stopping me from just disregarding if my parents weren't giving me blessings, I just could not move ahead. And it's just basically what I was thinking today. Yesterday I was thinking I was trying to have the moral compass of what Guru was saying, but it's a process to go from what you were brought up to what the ideal situation is. And so I was struggling there, and I could see I couldn't make that, I just could not go ahead with the marriage unless my parents gave me blessings. And so I thought the only way I can do it is to save my face from telling my spiritual master, I'm going to go ahead, and now telling him, no, I can't do it because my parents are not telling me, cannot. And that's like almost like I was disregarding his first instructions about going and asking them. So I thought, well, the only thing I can do is just not get married. In that way, it saves, I can face him by saying, well, I can't follow the instructions, your instructions, but I won't get married. And in that way, I am not doing anything, at least it's some compromise there, that I'll never get married in my life. In that way I say that, and my parents to know that just because I am not going to get married, that they're going to try to arrange my marriage otherwise. So I thought, this is good. I don't have to get married, and that's it. So then I told my mother, I said, Mom, if you're not going to give me blessings, then I'm not going to move ahead. I'm not going to get married.
Ever, right?
Never. Yeah, I'm never going to get married. That was my solution for me to having to face my spiritual master. I realized I just will take that vow of never getting married in my life. And I was young, and the idea generally with Indian girls is like, you devote yourself to God, that means you become like Mirabai, yeah? You just, that's it, So when I told my mom that, then she said, no, I cannot allow you to do so. He says, it is our responsibility that our daughter gets married, and I cannot allow you, that is not right on our part, that you never get married. So she said, you have my blessings. And so yes, Krishna gives us these situations for us to test us and see how we make the choices. I learned a lot just through the class, thinking about this whole thing, that how it's a gradual process from going through the moral compass that we brought up with to the spiritual compass. So Maharaj is...
Thank you.
Okay. So from choice to affection. Up here on the screen we have a definition of affection. Affection, as the qualities that we're going to discuss, has a lot of subheadings that can also be discussed. And so we're separating them out, particularly daya, or compassion, which we'll discuss at a later time. So we're focusing mainly on the top paragraph there. In the 12th chapter of the Gita, Krishna repeatedly declares his affection for Arjuna, and this becomes the basis for the Gita's conclusion. A relationship with God based on mutual affection or friendship, in Arjuna's case, becomes the basis of Arjuna's life, his thoughts, words, and deeds. That's that absorption in the spiritual nature as opposed to the material nature of all of us. Our thoughts, our words, our deeds. Krishna asks Arjuna to become everyone's friend, choosing a dharmic life of ahimsa, of humility, and of equal vision, while resting on the bedrock of his love for his friend Krishna. So some thoughts about affection in general, and then we're going to give some examples and also ask you to contribute. Krishna, his nature is reciprocal. Who can give me a verse from Bible Gita about the reciprocal nature of Krishna? So that's Krishna's basic nature, and so he's reciprocal. But what does he reciprocate with? I think that's an important question when we're looking at priti or affection. Do you remember in the beginning I mentioned some of the objectives we're trying to achieve by these sessions? One of them was to understand our own motivations and the motivations, appreciate the motivations of others. So Krishna is reciprocal, and he reciprocates with our motive in approaching him. And the quality with which we approach him. We think about Mother Queen Kunti and her prayers in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and it describes how she approached Krishna with feeling. Krishna was leaving, he was on the chariot, he had been with the Pandavas throughout all their difficulties, and now their difficulties were coming to an end. The battle of Kurukshetra was over, Yudhishthira was thrown, and Krishna was leaving. And it struck Queen Kunti so deeply that when she approached Krishna, she approached him as described in Bhagavatam with feeling. She had feeling. And so Krishna reciprocates with that, our motive and the quality of our feelings. The two of these things combine to be an intimacy with which we can approach Krishna and get him to reciprocate. This is the difference between, you remember the first slide we had there, the character of Vaishnava with heart in parentheses. The difference between character and heart is shown particularly in this quality of priti. We may do the right thing in terms of our character. We may do that. But if we want Krishna to reciprocate with love with us, it has to be more than just doing the right thing. It has to be done with the quality of how we do it. It's done with affection for Krishna, and then that really gets his reciprocation. And therefore, that's more heart than character. That's where the two terms, I think, are differently applied at different, as we look at different qualities. Later we're going to look at dharma, for instance, and dharma, doing your duty. Maybe one thing, you do the right thing. But if it's not mixed with this priti or affection, then it's maybe right character, the character of a Vaishnava, but it might not fit into the heart of a Vaishnava as easily. And as Devrita Maharaj said, I was trying to remember the exact quote he said the other day, but he was talking about Vaishnavas and Vaishnava relations. He said, we're the kingdom of love or the kingdom of something, or emotion or something like that. Does anyone remember that statement that he made? Maybe I just remembered. Huh?
We're a love-struck society.
Yes, we're a love-struck society. Yes, thank you. Who said it? Okay, yes, thank you. Yeah, we're a love-struck society. This is exactly the point. If we approach Krishna with the proper motive and proper feelings and affection, then we become part of a love-struck society because Krishna reciprocates that so very nicely. So that's a little bit about how character and heart sometimes interchange. The why we make the choice is what the heart's involvement is. So what we're going to do to try to illustrate this is that we have, and Madhumati and I are going to share a little discussion on each of these. We have 8 instances that we've taken from the Shastra that we believe illustrate this idea of approaching Krishna with intimacy. And it starts by, maybe you want to go to the next slide there? We're going to start this by going to Upadeshamrita and reviewing the 6 types of loving exchanges amongst devotees. So do you want to read them?
Dadati, I'll just go through word 2.
We can chant the verse and then we'll go.
Okay. Dadati pratigurnati guhyamakhyaati pritchati bhunte bhojayate chaiva shadvidham priti lakshanam. Dadati gives charity. Pratigurnati accepts in return. Guhyam confidential topics. Akhyati explains. Pritchati inquires. Bhunte eats. Bhojayate feeds. Cha also. Eva certainly. Shat vidham 6 kinds. Priti of love. Lakshanam symptoms. Okay, translation. Offering gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasad and offering prasad are the 6 symptoms of love shared by one devotee and another.
So these 6 symptoms are generally known to all of us, and I've written up here 3 categories: Guru, Vaishnavas, God brothers and sisters, and other persons. The 6 exchanges are often found in dealings with Guru, with Vaishnavas, with other persons, and so when you add 6 times 3, there's a lot of combinations and permutations that happen in terms of how affection is expressed in Vaishnava dealings. But we're going to focus on the one in particular, which is consulting or inquiring confidentially. How we inquire makes all of this, and the reciprocation we get from either Guru, Vaishnavas, or other persons, what to speak of what we get from Krishna himself. So our examination is going to focus on that, the inclusiveness of it and how it expresses a loving exchange in the love-struck kingdom of Krishna consciousness. So, number 1. Ram takes permission from Vishwamitra. You recall that Vishwamitra Muni came to the palace of Maharaj Dasra, asked for Ram and Lakshman to accompany him to the forest. So, Vishwamitra had been doing some sacrifice there that was being disturbed by some Rakshasas. And he came specifically to ask for Ram and Lakshman to fight them. Of course, Maharaj Dasrath, when he heard this, he was beside himself with anxiety. I'll come with my whole army. Don't worry. I'll take care of these Shastras. You don't need to take Ram and Lakshman for that purpose. They're young boys. They're inexperienced. He gave so many excuses, but in the end, Vishwamitra Muni left with Ram and Lakshman to go to the forest. This is the first time that Ram and Lakshman had been introduced to the sage, Vishwamitra. And so during their journey, they acquired so many things from him, and he taught them so many things. They served him as one would serve one's guru. And naturally, a loving relationship developed between them. Eventually, Lakshman killed the Rakshasas that were spoiling the sacrifice. Vishwamitra Muni and other Brahmanas were able to complete the sacrifice. And at that point, Vishwamitra Muni said to Ram and Lakshman, "Please accompany us to Mathila. There, Maharaj Janak's daughter is having a Swayamvar ceremony." And so Ram and Lakshman went with Vishwamitra to Now, you know this, there was a bow, huge bow, bow of Lord Shiva, and so many kings, princes had been invited to come there to lift that bow. But no one was able. Even Ravana himself came there and tried to lift the bow, but he couldn't do it. So they were sitting in the assembly of all the kings, Vishwamitra, Ram and Lakshman, and the turn came for Ram. So what did Ram do? What did Ram, and why did he do it? Ram stood up and he offered his respects to the bow. He circumambulated the bow very carefully with greatness. But he did something different than all the other kings and princes had done. He went and took permission of Vishwamitra. He inquired from him, "I know that without the blessings of the Guru, nothing is possible. If I am to achieve this task of lifting this bow, if that's your desire, I'm requesting your mercy to do that." And so he bowed before Vishwamitra Muni and he blessed him to be successful. And then Ram approached the bow once again. And when he approached the bow, everyone had been sitting there for so long and they'd seen one try after another. So it was a great surprise when Ram touched the bow and just very easily all of a sudden lifted the bow up like that. Everyone gasped, "Wow!" Because no one was expecting it. But that's the mercy of the Guru. And so this type of inquiry, this type of requesting of permission was based on the loving relationship that Ram had established with Vishwamitra. And therefore he gave his blessings wholeheartedly to him. Yes, be successful and lift the bow. Our lives are based on a similar kind of idea. Madhavati was just describing how she requested by her guru to do something, and she promised that she would do it, and made a difference in her life. It's something that just wasn't one factor among many, but it was a determining factor. And it was a factor based on love and relationships, not just doing the right thing. There was more involved in that situation. So there was more involved in Ram's relationship with Vishwamitra than just duty. There was actually love there, and so that type of inquiry, that type of intimacy, is the secret success in being able to lift that. So that's one instance how we're dependent upon the Guru is based on a loving relationship. So that's one type of inquiry.
the inquiry that the relationship that I'm going to tell is about Digvijay Pandit. Most of you probably know the story, so I will just mention a little briefly that Digvijay Pandit was he was a worshipper of Mother Saraswati, and actually Vrindavan Das Thakur describes that Digvijay Pandit was the foremost of the favorite sons of Mother Saraswati. So he had really worshipped Mother Saraswati so nicely, and she was so pleased with him that she gave him a benediction that he can conquer anybody as far as his scholarship is concerned. So he got a little proud with that, and he was going around India and defeating everybody. And then he had heard about in Navadvip, which was a place of scholarship. He came there to get his, let's say, a leaflet saying that I've conquered people from Navadvip as well. So he had heard about Nimai Pandit, that's Lord Chaitanya in his school days. He was a teacher, and so he came to defeat him. And basically, Lord Chaitanya, or I should say Nimai Pandit at that time, defeated him pretty badly. And he was, but Nimai Pandit did in such a way that he did not make him feel humiliated. That was another affection of Nimai Pandit, was that although he defeated him, and he defeated him because he wanted to take away that pride that he had, but he did it in such an affectionate way that that he didn't feel humiliated. But that didn't make him think, made Vijay Pandit think, why Mother Saraswati gave this benediction to me, and how is that I got defeated? So I'd like to read just a little paragraph describing what Vrindavan Das Thakur says about how Digvijay Pandit thinks. Let me see if I can find it here. The Lord and his students left the assembly to go home, but Digvijay sat alone in utter shame and dejection. He thought to himself, Mother Saraswati herself has given me this boon. I have not come across anyone in the whole world who could dare confront me in a debate. Neither the expert scholars in the 6 philosophical branches like logic, Sankhya, Patanjali, Veermansa, etc., nor the scholars of Shastra would contest my authority. How is it that the Lord has allowed this insignificant teacher of children to defeat me in this manner? Seeing the power of Mother Saraswati, now listen to this. So he was feeling, his ego was hurt. How could he, such an insignificant teacher, defeat me in this manner? But that was not only his concern. He says, seeing the power of Mother Saraswati undermined in this way causes me equal consternation. So there were that relationship that he had with Mother Saraswati, it was a loving relationship. So not only that his ego was hurt, but he was also concerned about Mother Saraswati. She's the mother, his mother. And how could that happen? Then he starts thinking, how have I offended the goddess that all my talent and knowledge were disparaged in this humiliating defeat? I must try to determine the cause of this situation. With that, he chanted his mantras and then lay down to sleep. So you could see that this is another kind of priti, where his feeling, he could approach, in this case, his spiritual mother, who has given him the benediction, and inquiring from her submissively, where did I go wrong? Why am I in this situation? So you see that inquiry, that if you're in a distress situation, you can inquire from your spiritual authority, have that loving relationship, and ask them, what did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong in my spiritual life or in my decisions that I'm in the situation where I am? So this is another kind of inquiry where we see that that can be done in a loving way. Just to tell you what happened, in his dream, Mother Saraswati looked compassionately. Again, he was defeated, and Mother Saraswati was very compassionate towards him, upon the Brahman, and spoke confidentially to him. Again, the word confidential, we have the word guhyam akyati. So guhyam means confidential. So she spoke confidentially to him. She said, "O learned Brahman, listen to me. I will now reveal to you that knowledge which is undisclosed even in the Vedas. If for any reason you reveal this secret to anyone, you will immediately forfeit your body. The person who defeated you today is actually the Supreme Lord of the entire cosmic manifestation. I'm an eternal servant at his lotus feet, and out of shyness I hesitate to stand before him." So you can see that he inquired confidentially, and she responded or counseled him in a confidential way also. So both Guhyam Akyati Prichati, see both those things happening in this episode. Any questions?
Number 3, Dhritarashtra consults Vidura. The nature of relationships, and especially loving relationships amongst Vaishnavas, means that sometimes the otherwise proper order of things can be different. For instance, Dhritarashtra, he was the king. Vidura was the Mahamantri, the prime minister. Yet the king submits himself to the advice of an inferior, the prime minister, to get factual knowledge about a situation. Such things can't happen where there's not a certain level of trust and faith in a person, love for the person, that allows that role reversal to take place. Srila Prabhupada tells a story about a rich man who had a chauffeur. And so every day the chauffeur would be driving the man to the office, back to home, whatever place he had to go, this way, that way. And so they spent a lot of time together, the chauffeur and the rich man. And they developed a friendship. And so although the rich man is the master, the chauffeur is the servant, Prabhupada explained what actually happened is because of the loving relationship, the friendship that developed between the two, sometimes the rich man would ask advice from the chauffeur. I'm facing this problem, what do you think, is a way to deal with it? The roles change based on the loving relationship. And we see this in Dhritarashtra and Vidura. They were brothers. Clearly, Vidura wasn't in line for the throne. He wasn't a rival in that way. Clearly inferior to Dhritarashtra. They had such a loving relationship as brothers that even though at one point in time Dhritarashtra dismissed Vidura for speaking the truth, he couldn't bear the truth, Dhritarashtra, and Vidura was speaking the truth, he couldn't bear it, and therefore he dismissed him, get out. But then his heart responded by calling him back. No, please come back, please come back. And he was able to hear. He was able to hear at various points. We all know the story. He couldn't hear constantly, but avail himself of advice from Vidura. Though sometimes it was unpleasant. We may have unpleasantries as part of our inquiry or exchanging with others, but if there's a love relationship there, then the relationship can still be productive. Of course, you can't just look for what you want in such a relationship. Look for answers like from a yes man or something. That's what Ravana did. Ravana also had an assembly with the Mahamantri prime minister and everything, but he didn't always want to hear what was being advised to him. He wouldn't take it. So sometimes the positions change based on love. So you want to go to number 4?
So this is loving exchange in Krishna and his cousin, Uddhava. Uddhava was a very close friend of Krishna, and he was also his minister. And so this portion that I'm going to be reading is about when Yudhishthira Maharaj wanted to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice. And at that stage, there were different advice was given to Lord Krishna by the other ministers and everything, and so some decision was to be made how to do the Rajasuya sacrifice, and then how to take care of this impediment of King Jarasandha, who was a very powerful king at that time. And unless he was defeated, they couldn't really do the Rajasuya sacrifice. And so at that stage, Krishna inquires from Uddhava what to do. And at this stage, I cannot find what I was going to read. Okay, here it is. Just before the great sage Narada arrived in Sudharma assembly house of Dwarka, Lord Krishna and his ministers and secretaries had been considering how to attack the kingdom of Jarasandha. Because seriously considering this subject, Narada's proposal that Lord Krishna go to Hastinapur for Maharaj Yudhishthira's great Rajasuya sacrifice did not much appeal to them. Lord Krishna could understand the intentions of his associates because he is the ruler of even Lord Brahma. Therefore, in order to pacify them, he smilingly said to Uddhava. So here we see the loving exchange between Krishna and his friend Uddhava. My dear Uddhava, you're always my well-wishing, confidential friend. I therefore wish to see everything through you, because I believe that your counsel is always right. So he's Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this is how he's feeling about his friend, his cousin. So much trust he's giving to his friend. And that's a real loving relationship, to have such a close relationship that you can go and tell your friend that I believe that your counsel is always right. It's not just because he was a good minister, but it was because of their friendship. He was a great minister and he was very wise. Uddhava is known to be a very wise person. And so it was about that he was wise, but not only because he was wise, because he says, my well-wishing, confidential friend. So he says, I therefore wish to see everything through you because I believe that your counsel is always right. I believe that you understand the whole situation perfectly. Therefore, I'm asking your opinion. What should I do? And he says, I have faith in you, and therefore I shall do whatever you advise. So that's such a loving dealing amongst Vaishnavas here.
Okay. We have some others, but did any of you have any instances that come to your mind about loving exchange in this inquiring, by this inquiring method. Yes, Ron?
I was just thinking you mentioned about the chauffeur and the rich man. I was thinking about Prabhupada. Hearing that how Prabhupada would ask his disciples to advise matters from the very beginning when you walk up to actually Buddhism.
Yeah, Prabhupada himself would ask disciples, he would ask them advice on dealing with different things. That's very good, thank you. Anybody else have anything like that comes to their mind? Okay, yes?
When Lord Chaitanya asked Haridas Thakur how the living entities who cannot give or who are not humans, how will they be delivered?
Right, Haridas, Lord Chaitanya himself is the huge avatar with his own plan. He asks Haridas Thakur, how would they be delivered? Can you imagine how that must have made, Haridas Thakur feel? Wow, validated, thank you. Anyone else have anything? If you have any, you can bring them up. I'll just run through a couple of others that we have here. I have one here that's more geared to us, and it's a lot of times we inquire by seeking
together and figure out what kind of spiritual strategy we have and how we're going to bring others to Krishna consciousness. So it seems like it's something similar to that.
Yeah, and getting back to the Srila Prabhupada, he was mentioning he would request the leaders of our society to gather every year in Mayapur, and two things, probably more, but at least two things. One, to map out a strategy for spreading Krishna consciousness in the coming year by discussing amongst themselves, make a plan, and then come back and review what happened last year, and then make another plan. And also for inquiring into the subject matter of unity and diversity, accepting that the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is very diverse worldwide, but how can we find unity and how can we go forward with our mission? So he wanted all the leaders to come together in Mayapur every year to discuss unity and diversity. So gathering us for those type of inquiring and exchanging discussions is also part of this loving exchanges, loving dealings amongst Vaishnavas. You have one more.
This is about Maharaj Yudhishthira. And we know the story where the Kauravas were defeated, and at a certain stage, Dhritarashtra, Vidur actually came and preached to Dhritarashtra and Gandhari that it's time for you to leave the palace and go to the forest. So the Bhagavatam describes how Yudhishthira Maharaj feels. You have to kind of see what Dhritarashtra and all the crew did to him and to the family. But it's very nice to read how Maharaj Yudhishthira feels for his uncle and what he does, what he says about his uncle and aunt. It's just a very, very touching verses here. So I would like to read those. Maharaj Yudhishthira, whose enemy was never born, performed his daily morning duties by praying, offering fire sacrifice to the sun god, and offering obeisances, grains, cows, land, and gold to the Brahmins. He then entered the palace to pay respects to the elderly. However, he could not find his uncles or aunt, the daughter of King Subala. So it may seem like that was a ritual he did every morning, to go and offer obeisances to his uncle and aunt. But you can see what further Sukdev Goswami says. Doesn't seem like a ritual. He said, Maharaj Yudhishthira, full of anxiety, turned to Sanjaya, who was sitting there, and said, "O Sanjaya, where is our uncle, who is old and blind?" He's full of anxiety and concern about them. Then he says, where is my well-wisher uncle Vidura and mother Gandhari, who is very afflicted due to all her son's demise? My uncle Dhritarashtra was also very mortified due to the death of all his sons and grandsons. Undoubtedly, I am very ungrateful. Did he therefore take my offenses very seriously and along with his wife drown himself in the Ganges? So this is the heart of a Vaishnava. He's inquiring from Sanjay. He further says, when my father Pandu fell down and we were all small children, these two uncles gave us protection from all kinds of calamities. They were always our good well-wishers. Alas, where have they gone from here?
I want to comment something on that. Well, it's so different actually when we think about where we've come from and the opportunities that we have in the association of Vaishnavas, where every exchange is just saturated, or as Maharaj used Maharaj's words, love-struck with emotion, as opposed to the desert-like existence that we find in the material world, where at best people are non-responsive, at worst they are vindictive and cruel and violent in their approach to dealings with others. We should appreciate the great fortune that we have in that regard and try to engage in these types of six-loving exchanges described by Rupa Goswami in the Upadeshamrita, Nectar of Instruction. It'll be good for us, and it'll be good for those that interact with us. So are there any questions about this? Or yes, please.
I had something come up in regard to, obviously, when you're in a position of responsibility or a caretaker of others, sometimes there can be, you have to instruct or guide or point something out, and often that you can do that in a nice way, but often it can be received by the recipient as not being affectionate, because everything should just be nice, and you can kind of get into that Preeti is just all roses all the time. Right. So it's kind of, what's your advice, in terms of having to instruct others, and you try to do it in the best way, but often it can be taken, if someone's not willing to hear or take instruction because you have a responsibility to point things out, often that can be, of course you're practicing to trying to come to the highest standard of being a caretaker or leader. That can often create bad feelings where the intention is, or the relationship's there, but the recipient, maybe due to immaturity or maybe even the leaders not having the professional or the bhakti level to deliver it in that way. It can often cause conflict, which is quite common because we're neophytes and we've got a place of responsibility. It gets quite difficult.
Well, I think there are two things. One is that we're all undergoing a process, and we may not be where we need to be right now, even if we're in a position of leadership. But we're in a process, and we should be sincerely endeavoring in that regard. If we're not sincerely endeavoring in the process to purify ourselves, then there's going to be some kind of problem. And what is the goal that we're working for through that process? Is to be able to communicate and interact with someone outside of our own selfish motivation. People can understand us when we interact with them based on our own personal interest. And we're going to talk a little bit about that when we talk about daya or compassion and working in outreach capacity. People know what our motives are when we interact with them. So even within the society of devotees, say from a management position, the devotees can know what your motives are. We shouldn't think that we can hide behind them. If our motives aren't striving for the best, I'm not saying they will be the best, they may not be the best, but if we're striving for the best, if we're looking for the welfare of others, the best interests of others, then even if we have to correct, even if we have to chastise, it doesn't carry the edge that pushes people away, that's uncaring. So, not that due to sentiment we don't do our service. We have to do our service. Leaders have to do their service, and that is to inspire others. But as I read that quote yesterday from Srila Prabhupada in the letter, it said that our leaders should be careful not to destroy the spirit of devotional service, which is individual, spontaneous, and voluntary. And then he said at the end, but where are such managers? So he's challenging, okay, you must come to this level where you can inspire devotees to do anything and everything, things even very difficult. Someone was telling me a story from Vrindavan when they were constructing the Krishna Balaram Mandir. Somehow or another there was a pit, a pool, kind of a pit in the back where all the stool water and everything went. And somehow or another a cow had fallen into that pit. And the devotees were so afraid, they were trying to pull the cow out of that because they didn't want the inauspicious result of a cow dying on the property where the temple was built. And so the devotees just dove into the pool themselves and got and pushed the cow out. Now people, they're willing to do anything if they're inspired properly. These devotees are inspired to make the best of everything for him and not let some inauspicious thing happen. And by that inspiration, they were willing to jump into the pit of stool. So there's a lot that we can do if we're inspired properly. But if we were like, get in there, so I think that those two things are there. We have to have the best interests of others in our heart, and that's the process of cultivation. So it's not that if we don't do it, if we don't act, it's not that we can't act in terms of management and direction that's needed, but we should strive for the best motive. Yes, Bruce.
About the moral compass and the spiritual compass, it seems that, especially in the West today, about as close as we come, and amongst devotees also, to the moral compass, is two things: care for devotees, and a little lesser extent, maybe a little less emotion, but still there, like ecological sentiment. And those two things kind of really drive devotees. They have a standard, and they feel embarrassed when that standard is not met, especially if it's not met by people who are, in leadership, for whatever reason. The younger people just have more ecological sentiment than older people naturally in today's world, because there's just more education about that. And care for devotees, of course, there's a lot of different viewpoints on how that should be done. So this seems to me to be kind of like one of the main moral compass things amongst devotees. And so, since you're not a temple president anymore, I'm hoping I can get away with asking you this question. But on the spiritual compass side,
He's got it worse. He's a GBC.
Perfect. So, we, as devotees, you see and you're very affected by when you feel embarrassed that you think the leadership aren't caring for devotees, maybe they're friends of yours or not, or even just they're new people, and you just think, how could that have happened, or whatever. And the same thing with ecological things, this such and such temple is so much more ecological than ours, and it's so embarrassing, and how can we invite new people, and blah, blah, blah. And so it just seems like, well, leadership, but when you were talking about Ram inquiring and taking permission from Vishwamrita, isn't it, this is my question for you as a former temple president, now GBC, isn't it, you were saying, he's taking permission from the guru and he couldn't lift the bow otherwise. And so isn't it also true for our plans, which are wonderful and the motivation is beautiful, to want to improve the temple or even a preaching center or ashram, so it can apply to the management there also. But my question is, doesn't it also apply beyond just maybe your direct spiritual master Shesha or Diksha or Shesha, initiating spiritual masters? They obviously have that role. But doesn't it also apply to the temple president? That we inquire from, even if our moral compass doesn't agree necessarily with perhaps how they're dealing, but if we want to go to the higher level of affection and see our own plans that we care so much about come to fruition, if we want to lift the bow, don't we have to take permission from our temple president also, or our ashram leader, if you're like in the brahmachari ashram that's not in the temple, that sort of thing?
There is in Prabhupada wanted a leadership structure that is meant to push forward the agenda of Krishna consciousness. But he's given us many elements of that. And if you ask me in terms of being the temple president, or even being the GBC of the community where I lived for many years, I think the one element that's often not included in the entire package of developing and executing a plan for spreading Krishna consciousness, interesting others in Krishna consciousness, is the Istagosti, which is meant to be a session where devotees can sit together and make plans and give input. I know that when I was at GBC in Alachua, where I still live today, we had very few Istagostis. And when we had them, they were really explosive, so I could understand why we didn't have them. No one wants to just be blasted, like that. But I think if they were a regular process, it's a way in which people have input, can be heard, and it's a way that the leadership can, take counsel, like Dhritarashtra was taking, or Krishna was taking from Uddhava. You can take counsel, and anyone that's sincerely interested in practicing Krishna consciousness and participating in the activities of this organization, I think that it's important to hear from them on a regular basis, so that we can make sure that we're getting proper counsel, that we are going down the right path, that okay, we have, plastic, plates and cups for our Sunday feast, but it's not that we're not aware that may be embarrassing, but, we don't have the finances to do something else, and so, give me some alternatives rather than, look, I'm just doing it, don't worry about it. I think better to take counsel and to give counsel with the right spirit also, not to criticize or tear down, but to be constructive. And that may mean talking straight. Being constructive may mean talking straight. But again, that talking straight has to come from the right place in the heart. And if it doesn't, then it's not going to be received, and then that divide starts. So I think if we start in the heart in our Vaishnava dealings, understand we are dealing with Vaishnavas, and then we'll take all the pieces that Srila Prabhupada gave us and we'll try to work cooperatively together. Even if we have differences, that's why Prabhupada said, meet every year in Mayapur to discuss unity and diversity. Way ahead of his time with that concept. Way ahead of his time with, understanding the differences of the peoples around the world and the circumstances they come from. And it's a challenge, quite honestly. David Tamari's knows, he's also a GPC member. He knows the challenges that our society, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, faces based on good, heartfelt paths and differences that people have in different areas of the world. So how to work together is a challenge. Is that interesting? Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, Mark.
As a culmination of your wife's story, the parents, they were opposed at first, but then what did their attitude turn out to be? I'm finished. Give back to her.
She can answer that one.
Did they still regret, or they were, live with it and tough it out, or they're in ecstasy?
Well, they saw him after a year, the first time, and they accept, right away they accepted, once, Indian thing is you're married, you accept it, but they were, at least my parents, they accepted that okay, she's married to him and that's fine, and after a year, they saw him for the first time, and, they accepted, but they are very, very happy. They are extremely happy that I have such a nice husband, and they are very affectionate to him, and my mother knitted a lot of sweaters for him.
Did this happen like immediately, or it built up over time, or?
I think that how my parents are, they accepted. In other words, they never said anything after that. The initial whatever they had to say, they said that, but then there was no discussion till after a year when they saw him, and I think, as far as I know, they seemed like they were accepting him right away. Would you say, Subaru?
Yeah, well, I was the only one of their children who would visit them. Every time I went to India, I'd fly to Delhi and I'd stay with them, for 2 or 3 days. The rest of their children all over the world, they didn't see any other of their children, they only saw me.
Yeah. So they were pretty, right away they were, once they accepted that I was married to him, then they accepted him as their son-in-law, and they showed all affection and everything to him. And they were very happy.
Her uncle did have me enter him through the back door.
Marge likes to hear that stuff.
They like to hear. Don't you see they're all on the edge of their seats? True life stories.
Well, that time my parents, I guess we had to go through a few things. It's not themselves they accepted, but because of social things, that was a couple times a little touchy, so to speak,
Can you explain?
What?
Yeah, like when you come, enter through the back door.
Yeah, that was my uncle, and this was in India when we were visiting, and my uncle, that is my father's brother, he had daughters, and they had to get married, and so in India, it's like when you get married, you have to see the whole family and what the other siblings of the daughter that you want to get married, your son get married to, they have to see everything, like who are they married to. So they didn't want to know. They had to hide the fact that one of the daughters in their family was married to an American. So they had to hide that fact. So they didn't talk about us, And so my uncle, when we went there, we told him, come from the back door, because in the front they were the people who were coming to see my other sister, my cousin sister. They didn't want them to know, so quietly had to go to the back door. Yeah. And then actually, when I went to see my parents in Denmark, I didn't know till later on, but my father at that stage was going to get a promotion or something, and he didn't want anybody in the embassy to know. I don't know why, but he didn't want anybody in the embassy to know that his daughter was married to an American. So it was all it was a real anxiety for him that I was, in one sense, visiting them there. And I guess whatever.
Could you stay in your room, locked up in your room the whole time when they were entertaining guests?
Yeah, the one time, yes. Yes, there were a lot of other diplomats who my father was entertaining, and yes, I kind of forgot that, but yeah, I just had to stay in my room and, not come out, so.
So when was it allowed that he could present himself to the world? Come out of the closet. Not using the back door.
After a few years.
After a few years, yeah.
After a few years.
After a few years, yeah. A couple of the daughters got my uncle's.
When there were no more threats, the daughters were all married.
Yeah, and the thing is that after I got married, I've got 3 brothers, and other 2 got married to not Indians. So our family is very international. We got all 4 siblings are married to from 4 different countries. So yeah, hey, not a problem. But as far as my father is talking about marriage, but then also Krishna consciousness, I never communicated it to my parents about what they went through and all that. But just a couple of years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, my parents were visiting us in Alachua, and so we had devotees over and we had a little program there. And at that time, surprisingly, my father said, he said, I have never talked about this, and he never told me anything. We never had any discussion about the past ever after that. And he said, I was ready to sue the movement for what your movement had done to my kids. He said, I was ready to sue, but then I realized, but I did not do that because it was a religious movement. He said, but I was very, very angry of what you had done. Because there were other reasons which I didn't get into detail, but then he said, but I want to tell you today that I am so proud of what your movement is doing, and I wish that there are many Prabhupads come and do spread this movement all over the world. And that's what he said then. Children do a lot of preaching. I think their hearts really change as grandchildren came, and then just seeing them grow nicely. But then I think the thing that really did it for them is that when my older daughter, when she became a lawyer, then they were satisfied. The mission accomplished. Yeah, they were very happy that she was, okay. Because I was homeschooling and my parents were like, I don't know, what is she going to do with her kids, She's not giving them proper education, and she's homeschooling them, she's doing this and that, But they wouldn't say much, but now and then they would make a little comment. But when they saw that, then they appreciated all their qualities. And like when she became a lawyer, it was like, wow, she's initiated, she follows all this, she does all, then all the qualities became, shine, So yeah. Any other question, Mark?
You did good.
We had another section on the life of Sanatana Goswami, as you see there, but we'll save that for another time. It basically showed how Sanatana Goswami was so loved by all the residents of Vrindavan. We're not talking about the other Goswami residents either, we're talking about just the simple Brajabasis who lived there, how they adored Sanatana Goswami, and how he exemplified the character, the heart of a Vaishnava, and endeared himself to all the residents. But we'll save that for another session, as it's already 9:30. Anyone, last questions anybody has? Yes, Prabhu?
My question is related to the power differential between the Jiva and Lord Krishna. And I struggle with both the choice and individuality that you mentioned yesterday, as well as preeti or love or affection that you mentioned today. So when there is this huge power differential between this super powerful man somewhere there and this tiny little childlike creature here, how do I really have this sort of choice? Like somebody mentioned yesterday, when I really become aware of what's happening, then it seems like it's a forced choice for me to actually choose this rather than that other choice is like a dirty water, this is material. So that's why I struggle there. And so what you mentioned yesterday, you quoted Upanishad, the sort of Maha Mantra, which I remember, sort of Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnas, Purnmadaya, Purnmeva Vishishyate. So if that is whole, and I am also whole, from the whole comes the whole, and when whole is extracted out of whole, what remains is also whole. So that sort of concept in Vedanta, that concept is used, and there, even the jiva feel that, okay, I'm at equal sort of level, and that they feel that they are merging with the same. So there isn't that power differential. So I struggle with this concept of having to love somebody so powerfully different from me.
See, that's the science of bhakti that's presented by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his disciples, the Goswamis particularly, in their literature. The unique contribution of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Goswamis' literature is explaining the power of Prema Bhakti. There's a lot of power and majesty in Om Purnamadat Purnamidam, the complete whole, as you mentioned. But that complete whole, due to the power of loving sentiment, allows himself to be subjugated by his devotees. No one can subjugate him. He's a complete, supreme, independent personality of Godhead. We are, as you say, infinitesimal. But the power of love for Krishna is so strong that it reverses that dynamic. And Mother Yashoda has a stick, and she can subjugate Krishna because of her love for Krishna. Love is so powerful. And that's the point that the Vedantists miss. And this is the contribution of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Bhakti, that we get some appreciation of how powerful a loving relationship with Krishna is. It reverses that differential. Krishna agrees to subordinate himself based on the love of his devotee. And that's what we're cultivating. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come. He's given the way to do that is by his Maha Mantra, which is a very powerful mantra that changes things dramatically in the world order. And it's very rare. It's very rare, and maybe that's one reason why we don't think it's so powerful, because we don't see it. We mainly see the Vedic literatures, the Upanishadic literatures, which are very vast, and we see very small contribution of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Goswamis, and we tend to think, oh well, because it's small and comparing to the large body, it's not as important, or it's less important and not as meaningful, but nothing could be farther from the truth. The science that's given to all of us. You know, we're all coming from the Western world. We're not coming from Brahminical background in Vedic India. Yet, according to the Shastras, as proved by the Goswamis, you're seeing actually an assembly of the most fortunate living entities in the universe. Chanting Hare Krishna regularly, worshipping the deity, honoring the Lord's prasad, dedicating their lives to service, to the service of Krishna. It's very, very rare. It's very, very rare. But somehow or another, we've gotten that great fortune. So we have events like this, and we have Srila Prabhupada's books, we have others to try to appreciate that, to try to appreciate the fortune we have in being able to serve Krishna and chant the Hare Krishna mantra, so that all-powerful Supreme Lord will become just like a plaything in the hand of his devotee. He likes that. That's the point. That's the secret, ultimately. That Krishna is the most confidential Swayam Bhagavan. He's Krishna Swayam Bhagavan, the most confidential understanding and form of the Supreme Lord is of a small boy in Vrindavan who's just waiting to have loving exchanges with his friends, with his gopis, with his mother and his father, with all the living entities in Vrindavan. So study this, try to understand this and appreciate it, and then we'll see how it's possible that unlimited Supreme Lord becomes submissive to his devotee based on love. So we can discuss more. At this point, I think we should end there. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.